Berlin News in English.
It is Tuesday, November 12, 2024. This is the live recording of Radio Speakhouse. I am Joel.
I'm Izzy.
Yeah, and I'm Dan. And welcome to our audience joining us live here at the Podigee HQ.
Coming up, Berlin's cultural institutions say they are facing an existential crisis as the city government plans to slash 10% of their funding. But could they be doing more to save themselves? Plus, we meet a man who has turned walking around while drinking beer into a career. Journalist Dan Cole, co-author of Beer Hiking Berlin, along with many other topics. Guys, how you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you doing? You're still here
I'm
in
still
Berlin.
here a couple more weeks before the cold weather drives me away again. Yes.
It is that time of year where I've started wearing Unterhosen
Oh, yes.
to keep my legs warm. And I'm just aware that they are on show right now.
Wait, what?
I'm wearing
You're wearing
long,
jeans. Oh.
these long johns.
Okay. Yeah, for listeners at
The
home,
long johns.
she's wearing socks as far as you know.
They're socks,
I want to just make
but
it clear.
they never end.
I do now mark the changing of the seasons by the migration of the wandering Joel. You know, it is sort of like we can track the Joel as it migrates from Europe to South America to, what do you call the area of
Australasia, Asia Pacific.
The Asia Pacific, Australasia?
The Antipodes. If you
I
will.
was going to say the Antipodes, but that just, I thought, seemed weirdly Eurocentric.
Yeah, it's a little Captain Cool.
Right. Yeah, it's the Antipodes of, but only for some people.
That's true.
I mean, I guess everywhere is the Antipodes of somewhere. Okay. Shall we see what's on the news?
Okay. We are recording this episode on Revelstrasse in the district of Friedrichshain, which has recently been named as the world's 18th coolest neighborhood by the UK's Time Out magazine.
Oh, I knew there was Time Out. Is Time Out magazine a real magazine? This is like the third time we've covered them making some absurd, listicle with some Berlin thing on it. I feel like, is Time Out just AI spitting out random things?
You might be onto something, Dan.
Time Out is important for one thing, which is that it raises rents, no? Just makes these listicles, and then within a year it's 10% rise in Friedrichshain.
Right, but they're probably behind now. Now they have to make the list based upon the gentrification. I mean, if they're just now getting to
They don't make lists of gentrification. That would be better, no?
Well,
they made lists of the 18 most gentrified districts in the whole of Europe that you should not move to if you're a digital nomad.
Are we sure that... well, what did they say? Did they say what was cool about Friedrichshain?
Yeah, I'm just getting... So, it was the only German district to make the list.
Okay.
Interesting. The magazine wrote, Friedrichshain is finding its footing again with a more grown-up crowd and a more mature palate. It's Berlin's bid for a contemporary cosmopolitan crowd, one with taste and an eye for details, whether that mean mezcal, tasting menus, or immersive art shows. What utter... bullshit.
Wait. I mean, they have those things. That's not... I mean, you're calling it... It's not like fake reporting. It's real reporting.
Is it just millennials growing up?
Millennials are they're grandparents now, aren't they?
No, it's us.
Oh, but really, what neighborhood would you in Berlin propose should be on the list of coolest places?
I'm not going to tell you.
You're not going to tell me.
I'm not going to tell
off the record. I'll edit point. What's actually cool?
I had thought this. I was thinking this on the ride over today because I thought I don't want to be Time Out. What do they know? Because I thought what I propose is an alternative, and I thought I actually don't leave the house that much, so I couldn't really tell you. The last place I went would be the only place I could think of, which I think is how these listicles are written. A journalist arrives and they stay in one hostel or with their friend or in an Airbnb, and they go, "This must be the coolest place of all." So I shall write my entire "I've been to Berlin" story about the 5 bars I went to within walking distance of here.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So which is the last place you went to?
I'm not going to tell you that.
I love the secrecy here. I have to say, I do spend more time in Friedrichshain in the last year or two than I have the entire time I never went here. Like I was just like, I'm not going to cross Warschauer for anything. Like this is just like, I mean, it had, in my mind, it was just a thing on the way to Prenzlauer Berg where I also don't want to go, you know, and between where I work for comedy and right now we're there.
You send us here all the time.
Yeah, no, it is, this article is 100% right. And I would say it should actually be the 13th coolest, not 18. Like who beat us? I still feel like I don't like, all right, let's move on. What else is going on?
So Berlin just passed its anniversary, 35 years since Mauerfall, since the Berlin Wall fell on the 9th of November 1989. So it has now been down longer than it was up, actually quite a lot longer than it was up because it was only up for 28 years. Was up for 28 years, but it's been down for 35 now, which is great. So the event was celebrated with 2 nights of events along the former stretch of the wall between the Brandenburg Gate and Checkpoint Charlie. So was anyone there? Did anyone go? Did you go?
I actually only heard about it like the night it was happening. I don't know how I missed that. But anyway, yeah, I know I didn't go. But apparently hundreds of thousands of people did.
Yeah, I was there.
35's not you were there?
I was there.
Was it nice?
It was beautiful. Yeah, they have had these amazing installations like with video footage from the fall of the Berlin Wall from like the months leading up to it, you know, like this chronology that keeps on, you know, building up and up and up. And then you've got Günter Schabowski saying like, yeah, ab sofort, you know, and then everyone's like, what? He just took down the Berlin Wall by accident?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
really
I remember
exciting.
the 30th anniversary, they had those like glowing balloons that like lifted into the air.
That was nice.
That's a real, I mean, but 30, what's 35? You're not middle-aged yet? It's wild that it's sort of, the Berlin Wall is like, it's like the Beatles of walls. Like it's the one you like, it's synonymous, they did it, but also like, when you look at how long the career was, you know, like to have had so much influence on the world in such a short time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. I like that. I like that framing.
Also, like the best stuff is towards the end, like when it's, you know, I don't like early, like whatever. There's a lot of misogyny.
Not a fan of the wall?
What's that? I think like it's like going up. Like how many images can you picture of it going up? Like the early wall stuff, it's not a big deal. Middle career, you know, people jumping over like
Getting
barbed wire
shot,
and stuff.
Killed, murdered.
That's one way. And then the coming down being like the rooftop concert, you know,
that's some cool stuff.
I feel like I've made a good thesis here of something that is totally meaningless.
You should have stopped at the Beatles. That was...
less speaking for me, the better. Joel, speaking of...
Yeah, we can. I can. Yeah. Have you seen the Berlin Transport Senator's Traffic Monsters ad campaign going around on social media by any chance?
No, I haven't.
It features furry monsters that look like animals from the Muppets going crazy in traffic situations. And they've been putting this on social media, on posters around the city. And the tagline says, it works better in German, it says, du hast das Gefühl, gleich drehst du komplett am Rad, which literally means you feel like you're about to spin your wheels, which means to like lose your tempo. And then it says, that's the traffic monster in you. Don't let it overwhelm you. Stay considerate. Stay human. More understanding for other road users will get us to our destination more safely. We'll get there better together. So the first ad they released was one showing a cyclist monster going nuts on their bicycle. And I have to say, it felt like I was being targeted. I felt like I was
Now I
aimed
know
specifically at me.
Now I know where I saw the ad. It was you sharing it on
it's-
social media.
But it basically unleashed a lot of monsters online. People outraged that the Senate was calling out cyclists as the problem and telling them to calm down instead of building better bicycle infrastructure and making streets safer or getting police to issue more tickets against bad driving. One comment said, "Thank you. I'll remember that when I'm almost killed by another SUV as a cyclist." Later, the Senate did go on and release other ads showing a driver in a car going crazy and a pedestrian monster failing to look up from their phones. But these posts also attracted their own shitstorm of comments from drivers saying it's all cyclists' faults, from pedestrians saying it's all the cyclists and the drivers. So it didn't really bring people together and make them think about their own behavior as planned, unfortunately. The Berlin Department for Transport published their own rationale for the campaign. They said that most of us think that the other people are the problem. According to a survey, 89% of people consider themselves to be very considerate, and 37% rate other road users as considerate. So 56% of Berliners would regularly experience arguments or verbal abuse in road traffic. 56%. That rings true for me as well. And 1 in 4 people do not feel safe on Berlin's roads. But I actually think this campaign should go further than just traffic monsters. How about like we do a campaign about like monsters in the supermarket checkout line, for example, like, you know, monsters serving you at cafes. Like,
Yeah, but that's just passive aggression. I mean, how do you even depict that? Like, what kind of Muppet is just sort of staring at you coldly? I do think it's interesting that like the statistics are interesting because we've got the number of people who don't feel safe is 1 in 4. So safety is less of an issue than the personalities of the people on the road, right? 89% say they consider themselves considerate, right? Like, so basically statistically speaking, all Berliners think of themselves as good people, right? Because I feel like the 11% plus or minus 5, because they only, like, and then we're talking about 30%, 37% think that other people are considerate, but that means they're also arguing with more people than they consider are as inconsiderate.
right.
So 56% of them are in arguments, but only 30% of the other drivers are bad, which means, well,
That's
I guess,
right.
Or
It's
is
a
that the
mismatch.
11? Maybe that accounts for the 11% of people who think that it's their fault every time.
Maybe it just means Berliners also need to get a bit more self-awareness about our our behavior.
But also, doesn't this totally speak to the fact that the Senate has moved away from actually making investments in the kind of infrastructure that will help all of these issues that they're pointing out, and rather putting the blame and doing a personal responsibility campaign, which is like sort of, ultimate, sort of neoliberalism, like gone mad, which is to say that, somehow we're all personally responsible for the fact that our infrastructure is really unsafe.
I still don't know what neoliberalism is, but I love the idea that instead of putting in a bike lane, they're like, just be nice to each other. I mean, it's less expensive.
Yeah, or just like you're the problem, okay? You think you need a bike lane, but actually just be less angry.
Yeah.
With life.
So in further road news, our friends at Fuss e.V., that's the pedestrian advocacy group that we've spoken to a couple times on the show, they recently made headlines by demanding that pedestrians be allowed to cross against the light. So what I mean is red ample, red light, doesn't matter. If you don't see a car and you feel safe, you should be allowed to walk across that street. Now, while this has some sort of common sense appeal, it came about because New York City changed their laws. Now, it had been illegal in New York City to cross illegally, to jaywalk is the phrase. Yeah, is that did they say that in your country?
We got it from you guys.
The term
no jaywalking. I just remember that from my childhood. I don't know where it comes from. Maybe Sesame Street?
No, well, that's an interesting idea, but is it not called jaywalking in
Totally is, but we got it from you.
okay.
That's what I'm saying.
While it was illegal in New York City, it was a pretty important part of the culture there. Like, everyone did it. If you've seen Midnight Cowboy, I'm walking, like it is synonymous with the city, and yet there was a €300 fine for doing it, which was rarely enforced and probably just an excuse to harass minorities. The real thing is that here in Germany, though, the fine is, I think in Berlin, €5. I think it's maybe 10 if you cause an accident, something like that. But the social stigma is significant.
Very significant.
So, and in
Don't
terms
do it in front of children.
Right, and don't do it in terms of children. Now, in response to both the idea that this is a social stigma we can never overcome, and that this might be actually a real safety issue, and that we have to protect the children, this is what at Fuss e.V. there have sort of suggested. It's when both people have the green that it's most dangerous for pedestrians. So when there's a right turn on green, that's actually what's most dangerous. And so what they suggest teaching children is to actually look and not just trust the little green man that it's safe. And so by empowering people to make their own decisions, you're actually going to raise safer children, which is maybe sort of true. It just sort of assumes that Germany is ready to make social changes. So I mean I like that as an ideal.
Isn't it also like kind of like the cannabis legalization? We do it already anyway. Like, do we need to make this legal? Right.
So the question is really, what are we? Because it's also a €5 fine. So what are we really trying to change here? It seems like the social stigma around it. So I'm not like, I like the idea. I'm not sure Germany is ready. I'm not sure I'm even ready for it at this point. Like, in terms of my level of integration, and by that I mean like the German meaning of integration, assimilation. I like kind of adopted this. Like I feel extremely unnerved by like the jaywalking I see when I travel to the old country of America. Like it's like I'm like, what is you? This is like wearing shoes inside. What's wrong with these people? They're this is my suggestion. The right on red that is allowed for drivers is something that was introduced in the U.S. in the 70s to save on gas. I'm not sure how long it's been a part of like, I guess what it's called here is the green whistle. Is any German kid?
What is this right on red and green whistle?
Grüne Pfeife is like green arrow, like I can't say that word. Pfeil. So you weren't always allowed to do that. And so I think maybe what we do is first we eliminate all right turns for cars, unless there's a roundabout or a traffic light at large intersections. And then, since there's no right turns, it's always kind of okay to cross at an intersection because the cars aren't coming.
Cool.
Yeah?
All right.
Yep.
Sure. All right.
I thought that was going to really land.
Radio spät auf. Berlin News in English.
Galeria Kaufhaus on Alexanderplatz is set to close by the end of next year, possibly never to reopen. The building will be renovated, requiring a temporary closure, but the Galeria chain is in financial trouble and might not return. The building's owner has suggested that the central library, the Landeszentralbibliothek, might be able to move in. Now, you might also remember that the library has also been suggested as a replacement tenant for the empty Galeries Lafayette on Friedrichstrasse. So, I mean, surely libraries can't just fill every empty shopping mall that becomes available in the city. Like we can't, or can they? Is this what we can do with these spaces instead?
I think the librarification of our institutions is really important because we have like vanishing public spaces, vanishing places for people to gather. I think it'll help to keep our politics more moderate if there's just like a library you can go to and check out. It doesn't even have to be books. You can get anything there. You want to just like, I was just at a library in the United States of America. They have them. And my kid just went there just to play video games with other young people. And you can just do that in a library. You don't have to open. I've seen 3 board game cafes open in Berlin in the last 6 months. But not to, I encourage small entrepreneurs, but also libraries, man. You can just go there and play board games with other people.
But this is speaking to like a larger, thing that's happening, which is like the Kaufhauses are going out of fashion, right? So it was early 2000s. Berlin's like, what are we going to do with this empty lot? What are we going to do? We're going to build a massive shopping center. And they built like hundreds of them. And people didn't need that many of them anyway. And then, post-corona, online shopping, everyone knows the story. And we're starting to see these massive retail giants, these huge Kaufhäuser going out of style and out of liquidity. And I tell you what, another area that we're going to cover a little bit later in the tour, in the program, is clubs finding it difficult to find space in the city. So maybe yes to libraries, love. Also clubs, also love. So these are also institutions that need spaces. So Galeria Lafayette now gonna be Watergate and Wildenstrasse in the same place. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's my pitch.
I feel like the vibes might not be there, but why not? I think Berliners can make a vibe out of anything. Also, you can have a library which has a club in it. I think that's maybe not. Okay.
It's got enough glass. Watergate was all about the glass. Now you've got Lafayette's got glass as well.
It was also, I think it's a nice addition to Alexanderplatz to have another library. I mean, to infuse more culture into that area would be fantastic. So if whatever it is, if it's open to the public and there's anything there, be it books, I'm for it.
Well, it probably won't be a library, Dan. I'm sorry to say. It'll probably just be an empty shopping mall that'll sit there ghosting for decades.
The Galleria building is currently being rebuilt as a high-rise, and Kai Wegner wants to see more of them. That was a news story this week that I read, was Kai Wegner wants more skyscrapers in Berlin after he went on a little trip. He went to New York. He took some photos and he was like, guys, do you know what they have and we don't? Bloody skyscrapers. Which feels so 90s. it's almost like he hasn't lived here for the past 30 years. And everyone was like, Potsdamer Platz, guys, we tried it. It was rubbish. So we abandoned that plan. And, but yeah, he loves the high rises. That was the entire content of the article.
I've got to say, I'm quite interested in the way Berlin's skyline is developing at the moment. We've got all these weird one-off developments in different places. You've got the Amazon tower. We've got that one out at Neukölln, which is going up so quickly and it looks so huge. If you're at Tempelhof, you can see the Estrelle Tower.
What is it?
It's a hotel. It's going to be the Europe's biggest hotel, which is next to what is already Europe's biggest hotel. It's massive. And it's
Talk about putting a hat on a hat.
It really is. And if you're in that district underneath it in Neukölln there, it's just like this monstrous thing that pops out of nowhere. And to be honest, I actually quite, I secretly like, or not so secretly anymore, I quite like the Amazon Tower, just on the end of the street here. I know it's, forbidden to say that, but it looks like something out of Blade Runner.
Please from the audience.
It's got those edgy lights.
Guys.
It looks like, it's not boring. You could give it that.
Yeah.
It is not boring to look at.
It is much less boring than most modern like skyscraper buildings. And guys who are booing, they tried to make it look evil. All right, like I do feel like there was subversion in the architectural design there. They're like, oh, Amazon, here's the look. Dark, menacing, weird folds, kind of like geometries that kind of almost don't make sense. Like it's a angular cancer growing up out of the city,
So the other day I clicked on a link randomly that a friend of mine had sent me, and I hadn't really read what it was or anything. And I clicked on this link and it was a picture of Jeffrey Bezos, and underneath it was a formal statement that he had released on Amazon's presence in Berlin. And it was basically like, we are withdrawing from Berlin. We realize that we have caused an awful lot of problems, and we have created a lot of discord, and it's problematic for these and these and these reasons, and went through this analysis of gentrification and the effect on the local communities and stuff. And I was like, what is this? What is this? Is this the world writing itself? And then I looked at the web address and it was the anti-Amazon campaign releasing the statement. I thought it was really clever bit of marketing there by them.
so it was a lie.
I mean,
is what you're saying?
Yeah, it's totally a lie. He did not say that. He didn't say anything like that. No.
Tower.
The Verkaufs often in Sonntag season is upon us. Legalized shopping on Sundays that are allowed up to 8 times a year. There's 2 coming up, December 22nd and the 8th, I believe. At any rate, there is a proposal from the city to now again, Kai Wegner is going crazy. He wants skyscrapers, and now he's going to let businesses decide when they use their open shopping Sundays, which I don't know how to feel about. Again, this is one of these things where I'm like, I moved here and I was like, I want toilet paper and it's Sunday. What's wrong with this country? Also, how do people with jobs buy clothes? It drove me nuts. And now I'm like, it's sacred. One thing I do think that all businesses should be forced to close one day a week. But I feel like,
they could pick it.
I feel like maybe they should close for 2 days. I don't know. The point is, everybody needs a day off, but it shouldn't be mandated by the Catholic Church, which day that is. Or labor unions, whatever, same thing, different things, very different things. I honestly wish I hadn't said that. At any rate, it's an interesting proposal. Again, I'm not sure how much it's going to affect the upcoming elections or the breakup of various, is this what will bring Germany together, either to be for, is this the new coalition? Keep our Sundays safe, or let us choose our own Sundays?
Well, Kai's not up for re-election until 26, no?
No, but I'm saying in terms of issues that are on the table politically, right. I'm not sure that this is, maybe this is
You're
what it is.
You're expecting Kai Wegner to address issues that are affecting real Berliners. That's the mistake right there.
I don't have any expectations at all. One other thing I want to bring up, which is that we covered this briefly. You've only got till December 31st to take care of the Reparatur bonus. Okay, for those of you who maybe don't remember what this is, It's the up to 200 euros in funding you can personally apply to the state to get your electronics repaired. Okay, so then rather than go out and buy a new thing, you can go out and have your old thing repaired. Now, this sounds like this is one of these kind of pilot programs that they try and test out to see if it's something they can actually put into law. And then it's one of those things where they also put out the pilot program so badly that it will prove to be ineffective, even though it's a good general idea. So they'll only cover 50% of the repair costs unless you're doing it at a repair cafe, in which case they'll cover all the cost of the replacement parts. And the invoice for the amount of the repair in general at a repair shop must be at least $75. If you're getting a replacement piece for something you're going to repair by yourself, but not at home, but at a cafe, they will cover that, but it has to be a minimum of 25 euros.
Are you part of the rollout?
I'm just trying to summarize this, so basically you have to also go out, do all of this, get all the receipts. You can't pay cash. You then have to take the receipts and the information and go to the online portal where you can then apply to have the reimbursement given to you via the state. There is third parties which have put out videos to explain how to do this. There's certain things, if you want to have repaired, you're going to have to go in and also figure out how to categorize your repair. It can really be almost anything, but for instance, if you have an electric shaver that you want repaired, you could put that under beard trimmer, even though could be something you're shaving something else with. They also give the example of pedals for an electric guitar. Now there's no category for that, but you can file that under just electric guitar. So basically, you got to click like any form, just click something. It's fine. If you get it done, it's fine. What are they going to do? Read them all? So at any rate, but in general, I do like this idea, and here's what's going to happen. If you go to a repair shop, they'll probably do half the work for you so they can get the free cash.
Yeah.
The point is there a friendly reminder to go out and take advantage of this program? It ends December 31st. Instead of buying yourself something new, get it repaired. And check out repair cafes, because there's more of them springing up, including at the shuttering Galleria at Hermannplatz. So another thing you can use those for.
So we wanted to talk about a phenomenon that many of you will have been experiencing, witnessing, and witnessing in some pain and horror, which is something that in German is called Clubsterben, or the death of the clubs in Berlin. The year is fast coming to a close, and so are several of Berlin's iconic nightclubs. Watergate and Wilde Renate will both host their last parties on New Year's Eve. In the case of Wilde Renate, the club has had to shut after the owner of the house, Podigee Real Estate Group, decided it was not going to renew the lease for the club organisers. Watergate is owned by the same owner and has suffered the same fate. The club released a statement saying that the holding company, Podigee, is accountable for the closure of the club, and pointed out that the company owns at least 200 buildings in Friedrichshain and in recent years has faced repeated criticism for steep rent increases, temporary leases, and unnecessary vacancies. Giora Podigee acquired the majority of his real estate empire during the Wild West days of property sales during the 90s in Berlin. The majority of his holdings are in Friedrichshain and were bought partly from restitution claims from home owners who were dispossessed of their property during the Nazi regime and later were living in Israel. I find that wild. So other than real estate owners, though, the Friedrichshain clubs are also facing imminent threats from the final 17th building phase of the A100 motorway. About blank Neue Zukunft, the Oxy, the Void, the Villa Curiosum, Club Ost and Elsa are, and Wilde Renate was, all under threat from the last section of the A100 route, which is set to bulldoze down large swathes of the cultural landscape in Berlin's most vibrant party neighborhood. So that threat is still very much there, and we'll need all the alliance building possible between climate mamacitas and the techno heads to stop that from happening. But there are also many who see the need for Berlin's techno clubs to diversify their business models so that they get much wider revenue sources. Many point to Berghain's practice of hiring out spaces to artists, music venues, cultural events to keep revenues coming outside of the 4-day club weekend when they can get revenues from entrance sales. So,
first of all, I'd like to point out that there's probably a bunch of other really cool clubs we don't know about. Somewhere
we obviously don't know about, but I think it does seem to be something that has, it was triggered during Corona. A lot of clubs facing a huge amount of stress because they had 1.5 years of the very patchy revenues coming in from ticket sales, and then the these landlords who are just coming in and saying nah. And then obviously the continuous development of parts of the inner city that previously were open to, club life because they were abandoned buildings and could be taken over and turned from, being...
And now they can go back to being abandoned buildings.
Well, I mean... A lot of the time, that's kind of what happens. Like this same real estate mogul, he was responsible for the eviction of Liebig 34, which was a queer feminist squat. These real estate moguls have so much more power than the cultural institutions or the people of Berlin who need like quality housing. And I think that there are so few laws that are actually successful in combating this.
Yeah, and what not enough people are saying is that he also has a controlling interest in Time Out magazine, which, no, that's, again, a lie.
He would have named it as the 13th coolest neighborhood.
Right.
He would definitely have.
There are drugs and music genres we haven't even heard of yet that are being consumed somewhere in Berlin, or maybe not in Berlin. Like I'm sure there's even like cool cities that we wouldn't even know to move to until the real estate's already
names it as like number 17.
I mean, as much as I do lament all of this, the idea though that one could diversify your business model as like a techno nightclub is insane. As anyone who's like worked in that industry, these are not places you walk through during the day and think, what a lovely place to have a business conference. Or doesn't this smell just make you think, oh, I should have my bridal reception here? Like it's not. You can't make a thing it's not a good reusable, it's set up to do one thing very specifically and very well. And even within Berghain, you're not using Panorama Bar as like exhibition. They're using different spaces in different ways. They also are a kind of unique institution in that they are like whatever, you can do anything at Disneyland and people be like, oh, that sounds fun. Like you can't just be like, hey, do you want to come to Villa Curiosum like during the day to like have a food festival or something, whatever, to buy T-shirts? I don't know what they're proposing. It's also many people who are in the techno scene and in the party scene are put out by what that means to then the social aspect of what they've done. So when you take things and you make them just, spaces that are open for everyone, or the funding to the highest bidder, or, it doesn't necessarily recreate the culture that you're trying to maintain, because really these places are not synonymous with the culture. Like they were just empty buildings, and new empty buildings could become new cultures or whatever. But like saying you should just find other ways to make money isn't a solution to the problem when they need to make money to feed greedy landlords, right? Like it's just the math isn't there.
So tax the landlords more or regulate to save them?
No, we don't need landlords. Okay. They contribute nothing.
You're proposing a much more radical solution than I thought you were going for, Dan. Yes.
Man, we could, it's enteignen. We can enteignen whatever we want, whenever we want.
Another area of culture. So I'm going to reveal why I'm not speaking up here very much. I'm not part of this demographic very much either. So my tastes are a little bit different. At the moment, Berlin's culture scene is up in arms because they are facing what they call an existential crisis. There's a campaign going on at the moment run by most of the big cultural institutions of the city, the opera houses, the philharmonies, the orchestras, the galleries, are raising the alarm because the Berlin city government has foreshadowed that they will be cutting the culture budget next year by 10%. The culture budget of Berlin is 1 billion euros annually.
Okay.
And that is around 2.5% of the whole city expenditure. That money goes to a lot of big institutions. It goes to a lot of festivals that happen. It goes to workshop spaces, rehearsal rooms. But the city government has said they want to save money because they fear that they have overblown their budget. And they are not just cutting at culture venues, they're cutting right across the board. They've basically told every government department, you're going to have to cut your costs by at least 10% next year. So this is affecting city governments. The local city councils are all saying we can't go ahead and plan for next year. We don't know whether we can give money to social programs. We have to cancel school trips. We have to stop building bicycle lanes. They basically put all of their spending on hold while the city government figures out what they're exactly going to cut. The culture institutions are speaking out particularly loudly because they've got a bit of a microphone to do so, and they're saying that they can't survive this. And the reason they say so is because although 10% of a budget might not sound like, a death knell, from in general, they say if you run a big venue like an opera house or a theater, 90% of your costs are actually fixed costs, like your rent or your staff contracts, or the contracts that you've budgeted out for the coming year for all of the productions, which
Utilities.
Insurance. So the fixed costs, you can't just cut those from one month to the next because you've got a contract. And if you tear up the contract, then the other person can sue you. And, you basically would still have to pay the money out anyway. Same with staff costs. You can't just easily fire people. You've got to pay them out over time. So it would still be expensive, even if you want to wind down.
Yeah.
So basically saying
there's certain minimums you can't go below. Some of those are not even fixed. They're worse than fixed. They go up. Right? Like we're talking about things that are getting more expensive. Their utilities, their staffing, all of that is getting more expensive.
Right.
And there's just to keep it open, to keep the lights on, there's a minimum with all of that. So even if you do less.
And some of these organizations are saying that effectively, even if you just cut 10% of our budget, that 10% would then have to come out of the additional costs, which are things like international cooperation projects, or inviting other artists to come and visit the city, or being part of putting on a festival. Like these are the things that are on top of the the fixed costs, which would have to go. So one festival said if you cut 10% of our budget, you basically are cutting 30% of our programming. So it's not like commensurate. So there's a campaign at the moment to try and say save culture in Berlin. So I'm a big fan of culture, particularly the type that gets funded out of this money. I go regularly to the opera. We're incredibly lucky. We have 3 opera houses in Berlin. It's amazing, thanks to the wall. I don't know if thanks to the wall, but because of the wall. We had both sides, the East and West, trying to outcompete each other by maintaining their own opera houses and concert halls. So when the wall came down, we ended up with 2 of them. In fact, more than 2. We've got 2 big concert houses and at least a couple of smaller ones, 3 opera houses, additional ones, smaller ones as well. I love going to watch this music. I'm not an expert on it. I don't actually know that much about the music, but I just love getting blown away by a big orchestra playing a huge piece of music that just takes me away. I really enjoy it. But I will say, I am the only person I know who does that. And I often drag along friends because I'll buy an extra ticket, and it will be their first experience ever of going to one of those places. And there are some big orchestras that always sell out. The Berlin Philharmonie, for example, the Philharmonica, that's world famous. It's rated as the best orchestra in the world by some. And almost all of their concerts sell out. But there are at least 3 other major orchestras in Berlin that also play in the same building or in other concert halls. And they don't sell out. You go to those concerts and there's plenty of empty seats. At the opera, if you go to a big name opera like Tosca or something famous that everyone's heard of, that's going to be full. But all these other operas that they put on, and they put on a lot of obscure stuff because that's part of their programming, half empty or even worse. Which is great if you go and buy a cheap ticket because you can sneak down to a good seat, which I quite frequently do.
They've cut the budget for ushers.
Yeah, you just go walk down. Nobody stops you. But as I'm doing it, I'm thinking, well, this is great, but also terrible, because what does it say about the future of this art form if no one's coming out to see it? I'll frequently look around the room and I'll be the youngest person there. And I'm not young, guys. So, it's not a good thing that these places are not being frequented by Berliners. And I think that these institutions, while I would hate to see any cuts to their programming, maybe this is a bit of a wake-up call that they need to find new audiences. And I don't know if they're doing a particularly good job of it. So another example, the Staatsoper, the big pink building on Unter den Linden. Mm-hmm. I went there with another journalist friend to see a fantastic production called Turandot, which has this massive marionette on stage that wanders around, like representing this evil princess. It's fantastic. But we were on the top balcony, and it was basically empty up there. So the theater was only 1/3 full. So we had this idea: why don't we contact the Staatsoper and say, hey, we want to do, my friend's an Instagrammer. I said, let's see if they'll let you come in and do a backstage video to promote the next production of this show. Yeah. And, we just wrote an email. Can we just come in and do this? They wrote back saying, we don't have any time for that. Now, okay, So, like, what are you doing with your time then? Because you're not selling tickets and you're not looking for new audiences through Instagram, or maybe you're too cool for influencers, but like, what are you doing to stop this decline? So I don't want to see these places close or slash their budgets, but I do want to see them come up with new ways of selling tickets. There's these apps now that you can use. They're like, like Urban Sports Club for culture.
Yeah.
None of the opera houses are on there. Okay, maybe the business model isn't great for them. Maybe they need to negotiate that better. Okay, but they could come up with their own form of last-minute tickets. Other cities you go to, you can get last-minute tickets, right? To theater and things. Last-minute that doesn't exist here. Why isn't there a last-minute ticket system, that could sell tickets for half price on show night? So I really think that, as well as signing the petition about saving culture,
Right.
and
But it's a false dichotomy you're drawing.
is it though? Because I think both will be necessary and are necessary, because yes, we can save the budget, but even if we save the budget, that's probably not going to save the art form in the long run if these theaters don't do more,
Right.
get more people
Absolutely.
in.
Well, there was also the reason, they went for the edgy opera in Munich that caused people to vomit because of the live piercings and I think female nudity or something. I didn't read the article
Gross.
because it didn't take place in Berlin. I don't care about it. It's for my podcast, but there is but part of the reason we have funding is to make sure that we have things that people don't want.
Yeah.
It's to say 100%. Capital isn't the answer. And as much as I love this your slow slide into is this neoliberalism? Is this what we're talking about?
No, but I think that
I
think there is a solution that lies between what both of you are saying, which is that, what Joel is saying is that you need to get more inventive with your promotion strategy, which I completely agree with, right? The old fogey, the established ones, the ones that have the audiences, the ones
Right.
that have the money, the ones that have actually the
You didn't add an angry
they
Muppet.
need less money and more of that. And the ones that, we don't want or need to challenge us culturally and need to push those boundaries of what people will actually pay for on a Friday evening, they need the funding,
Okay. So this is really this is the budget.
We solved it, guys.
No, you you take the cool artists and you pay them to do ads for the boring artists. So then the funding basically gets used twice. Right? This is just good economics. So if you're going to spend $1 million on opera, you spend it on having cool Berliners tell everyone it's cool. And then, because really cultural capital is the only thing that keeps this city going, right? We never had an industry and the tech just moved here because they were like, fine, we'll go there. So really all we have to do is just pay people to tell the world that things in Berlin are cool, even if they're not. But that's the whole
Apart from
point.
Time Out magazine, okay?
Right.
Don't tell
Time
them.
Out magazine.
So, beer.
What?
All right, we have a guest to welcome to the show, a man who knows all about beer and music, a man who knows where you can get the best beer and is going to tell us exactly how you should go and get it. So please welcome to Radio Spätkauf, journalist Dan Cole.
Hello.
Welcome, Dan. You are the author or co-author of the book Beer Hiking Berlin, which you're holding in your hand. Tell us about this fantastic
They
book.
need less money.
It's
and
predominantly
more
actually a
of
hiking
that.
guide to Berlin, but it's told through the narrative of beer and breweries. So it's there's 40 hikes to 40 different breweries in the city and in Brandenburg as well. I count anything that's in the ABC zone, I kind of count as fair game.
Okay. Also, if you're walking, you don't need to buy the extension ticket, I guess. Or do the... How? I guess you don't always walk the whole way there. Or bike.
But get the extension ticket to go back, though, because you've been drinking beer once you get...
Dan, can you give us a typical a route we might find in the book?
Okay, so I mean, for example, there's a brilliant one, the Mirror in Potsdam. It sits on the lake, and so the hike in the book, you take the train to Potsdam, and then you walk through Neuengarten, and then you go there. Yeah, we don't count for returns. That's down to your own discretion.
Okay, because I guess like a hiking book without the beer, you just camp at the end or whatever. But is the favorite hike and the favorite brewery, do they match up, or are those two different things?
I mean, these are questions that get asked a lot. What's your favorite hike in Berlin? So I personally wanted to include my favorite hikes in Berlin. So that included Tegeler Fließ. in the north of the city. It's in Pankow. It connects Spandau to the east. It's this beautiful little stream walk where all the water buffaloes are. It's really cool.
Wait, what? Water buffaloes?
Yeah, Berlin's rampant with water buffaloes.
It really, you don't have to make up fake wildlife to get us to go hiking.
But this is I think this is for another podcast maybe.
All right.
And then stuff through like Grunewald and around Muggelsee. So those I wanted to include in, and then also my favorite breweries as well. So Fürst Weiercheck, which I think is probably one of the best breweries in Germany.
Say that again.
Fürst Weiercheck.
Yeah.
It's two guys who got together, as you do, decided to make beer. One of them was, I think one's from Poland, the other one's from Germany, and these are like a combination of their surnames.
They were. I was wearing. So they sponsored Podfest, my podcast festival, and I was wearing a T-shirt from them. I was at the Boston. Now, I know, like a lot of people, Berliners have not heard of this brewery. They have incredibly cute cans, by the way, and they're always putting out new beers. But I was wearing their T-shirt at Boston Logan Airport, and someone stopped me to be like, "Cool shirt, I love that beer." And I was like, "Yeah, man, they're friends. Yeah, I'm cool."
Friends of the pod.
Yeah, they're doing good stuff. But how's the hike to get to them?
Where is that?
So this is they're actually based all the way out in Siemensstadt and Berlin. They're not one of those places where you can just literally walk in. They're only open Friday afternoons. I think they have problems with the local council about being established as a bar or a tap room or whatever.
Right.
But they're on that little old disused Siemens line. So I think when that gets up and running in a few years' time, I think the business is going to kick off there.
Nice.
So tell us a little bit about beer in Berlin and why it's so hot right now.
It really is. Like, I mean, everywhere benefited from the craft beer explosion of like the early 2000s, 2010s. But Berlin predominantly more than anywhere else. I think I would argue that Berlin is probably one of the best beer cities in Europe. There are over 40 different breweries here. And that's a culmination of, people coming from abroad, different brewing culture and history, and coming together and doing different stuff. And back then, rents were cheap. There were empty buildings. There's going to be another one. So maybe we're going to have another craft beer explosion. So, yeah. And then by the process of that, you had a lot of different beer styles that came in here. So you had a lot of stuff that came over from the US, like all the hazies and the IPAs and stuff. But then you've got like sours from like Europe and like classic pilsners, and all this is accessible within the city.
Mm.
Is there any chance that we'll also see like a brewery sterben? Like the influence of?
We did see one like after the Second World War. There were like 2 breweries left after. Like before the Second World War, it was like 200 breweries in Berlin, and then afterwards there was like 2. So
I meant now with like the same thing that's affecting the clubs.
No, I mean it's a very good point actually. The brewery sterben actually happened at the start of the last century. Berlin was actually the biggest manufacturer of beer in the whole entire world. The Kulturbrauerei in Prenzlauer was the largest manufacturer of beer anywhere. You go there and, if you go around the whole complex, it's easy to see that was the case. And then, First World War did not do great things for the brewing business in the city, in the country. And then the Second World War, completely killed it as well. But yeah, now we're seeing a little bit of a problem everywhere across the world. The costs, the inflation and the cost of energy is really hitting the brewery business hard, because essentially making beer is, you're just brewing malt 24 hours a day, and that costs a lot. So a lot of places are suffering. So that now's the time to like support your local brewery. Yay!
So I've got a question because I'm perhaps not your target market. I actually like alcohol-free beer, and here's my question: are there any good breweries that do alcohol-free beer in Berlin on tap? Because everywhere I go to these craft brewery bars, I notice they're always cheating. They've got their huge lists of all the delicious-looking beers with all the percentages and all the funny names, and then right at the bottom you'll have like one alcohol-free, and it's going to come out of a bottle or a can. And I know that in other countries, there is alcohol-free beer on tap. For example, in Spain, a lot of bars in Spain have it on tap. So why don't we have it here? Because it is popular.
Yeah, and growing.
I mean, it's a good question, and you kind of caught me off guard there. But I think Germany does some of the best alcohol-free beers ever. Like I run the half marathon almost every year, and I love the fact that when you cross the line, the first thing you do is you get an alcohol-free Paulaner, and it tastes amazing.
Yeah, when I was running bars in Portland, our only like import beers would be non-alcoholic because we had more breweries per capita than any city on earth at the time. But none of them really did good. We would bring in whatever now I know, not even the good German non-alcoholic beers because it was the only thing that was drinkable.
But I might be wrong. I'm pretty sure I'm not, but I think Bierlo in Gleisdreieck has alcohol-free on tap, but that's probably the only one.
Thank you very much for the tip.
So, yeah, I think it's challenging as well to actually make an alcohol-free beer. But with that in mind, I also endorse like classic Berliner Weisse, which is a very low alcohol drink and it's very light and summery. I think it's only about 2%. So I think that also makes a good alternative.
Okay, so what I love, you're from England, I take it. I really love the British countryside pub. They're such cute little places. They're sort of dark and yet somehow inviting and comforting and warming. Do you see any equivalent of that in Germany or in Berlin? Kneipe doesn't really have the same appeal, does it?
Yeah, no. I mean, in Berlin, not so much. And I think you've got there's a lot of history involved with how the city and the infrastructure grew to kind of accommodate these. And there's also Kneipensterben that's happening. A lot of these old classic places are they're struggling to attract new demographics.
Yeah, but they're also suffering from Kundensterben.
Yeah, like everything. So I mean, you have to kind of go out of the city to find this whole country pub vibe. Like my favorite place to go beer hiking is in Franconia, like North Bavaria. This actually has the most amount of breweries per person in the world. And this is a great place for... Question me on that one. Yeah.
No. It's for the state, not the city. It's different. Yeah.
It's a great place for like wandering around beautiful countryside. And then there you get these great, amazing like breweries, like tap rooms, old farmhouses with the fireplace and the freshly brewed ales and stuff. It's fantastic.
The old fashioned these massive breweries that were central to Berlin in the turn of the century, the last one, or also cultural institutions though. Like people would go there for like boxing matches, and you still see that like right near Maheineke, and that's I'm mentioning this is my neighborhood, but there's a former brewery with a boxing ring celebrating like that was like part of that. And now it's schools and they've reused the space. But like I think you see now a lot of that here, where like Kulturbrauerei is in a sense accommodating to like cultural, and like they have a great winter market there. So I think there's a way to kind of bring that back just by putting breweries into abandoned shopping malls.
Right. So on British beer influence, the one thing I actually like the British warmish beer. I know people mock it, but when you're there and you've gone for a long hike, or you've just been out and it's cold weather, it's actually quite nice to have a pint of bitter, and it's not. I don't even mind that it's like not freezing cold. Is there a place in Berlin that does a decent British style bitter?
So I mean, here's what you have to remember about British beer culture and British pubs and beer. There's this like stereotype that British beer is like warm and it's rubbish and whatever. And it is, because it's an ale. It's not a lager.
Yeah, we call it ale.
So, there are two different types of beer. There's lager and there's ale, and ale has to be brewed warmer. It doesn't have to be kept as cold. So it is warmer, and it has a lower alcohol content. And that's why you have a better kind of a pub vibe, because people can just drink more and drink for longer. And it creates this vibe. German beer is twice as strong. So it's kind of why like pubs...
And twice as big.
Twice as big sometimes. Yeah, that's why you kind of get like this more, pubby vibe from British stuff. But like, yeah, to go to your question of like, where can you go and kind of get this vibe or like drink British ales? Home bar, I would guess. It's the British pub in Berlin. Just here.
Is it in Friedrichshain?
Time out, 17th best neighborhood in the world. And they import a lot of British ales. They have British pies. They like have British charcuterie. I'm a fan. Yeah.
All right. Might go there.
Yeah, I have to say I do appreciate you importing the very like what feels very British tradition of going on a walk and ending in a pub, which is something that when I have
Actually quite
friends
nice
going with me back to England or something, with my husband, for instance, like showing him that culture felt like taking him home properly, like going on a long walk in the countryside and then ending in a pub. That feels so normal to me. It's what I spent like my whole childhood doing, and it's not real. Well, yeah, because like they also do the Sunday roast in a pub.
Yeah.
So you go to a pub for a Sunday roast, and the parents are all, getting pissed and stuff, and then the kids are like just I don't know, like drawing on the crappy pieces of paint with the drawings that they have with the crayons.
I mean,
stuff.
that's where the inspiration for the whole book and the whole project of like hiking and drinking came from, because I also have that not necessarily same childhood, but kind of same upbringing as well, of like going for the walk to the pub or the countryside pub, and then, having the Sunday roast and having a few ales and then going back. And that's just where the whole inspiration came from.
So you and Yvonne also have a newer book. Addition to beer hiking you can do here, you've also got wine hiking, and that's throughout Germany. Is that right?
Exactly, yeah. So the beer hiking Berlin is available in English and German, and the wine hiking book is only available in German. So it's called Weinwandern Deutschland, and it's 40 hikes to 40 wineries in the whole of the country.
And are any of those near us? Do we have wineries here?
Yeah, actually, so there's a classification of winery in Germany. It's called the VDP. There's only 200 wineries that are on that list. And the closest one is actually in Werder, which is like 10 minutes outside of Potsdam. And it's a beautiful winery. They have a classic Weinberg over the Havel. You can't visit there in the winter, but like from April onwards, I thoroughly recommend just going down there.
All right, so it's seasonal question. It's getting chilly. Nice season for a walk. What's a nice winter walk to go on?
A winter walk, I would say always go to Grunewald.
And where do we end up there?
So the Grunewald walk in the book actually ends up at Forster Weiercheck. That wasn't pre-planned.
They're not a sponsor of this podcast at all, by the way. Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. Where should people get the books locally here? I'm sure there's...
So the books are available from everywhere. So if you like any kind of books, if you want to buy from Amazon, you can.
You don't have to.
But Dussmann, I think Forster Weiercheck are even selling some. Or if you get in touch with us through the Instagram account, Hiking and Drinking, then we can also sell direct.
Oh, yeah, a little signature, because I like to do that for my mom.
Can I also just say to point out that Dan also writes for the Berliners monthly music section. You've got your own podcast called Vinyl Futures. You also play in several punk bands, so you got a lot going on there. So there's plenty of more content from Dan if you like what you hear.
Just a general, whatever you need, like Dan's. I mean, yeah, it's yes, hardcore, and beer and wine. And walking. And,
why not? I'm in my 40s.
I mean, also, I'd like to, maybe you want to write a book about driving. Like, we have an American tradition where we drive to places to drink. And I don't know, like, just throwing cars are the enemy. Check out the podcast. We'll put links to everything. Maybe just one link to Dan. We don't want to clutter the show notes. Dan, thanks so much for joining us.
Cheers, thank you.
Dan.
Thank you. So our next guest is Moritz Ahlert from Kiosk of Solidarity. So this past summer, you might have noticed an unusual kiosk popping up at public spaces across Berlin, offering juice, coffee, and a place to talk about important social topics. It's called Kiosk of Solidarity, and we are joined by its curator, Moritz Ahlert. Welcome. Hi. So Moritz is a senior researcher and lecturer at the Habitat Unit of the Institute of Architecture, the IFA, at TU Berlin, or the Technische Universität. Moritz, can you tell us a little bit about Kiosk of Solidarity?
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. It was quite spontaneous, and I'm happy that Spätkauf and in other parts of Germany you say kiosk is here coming together as a form.
Yeah.
So
nice.
I think it's a very nice combination here. The kiosk is actually has its roots in a research project I was part of. It ended somehow this year. We're still working on a publication, very academic. And the kiosk was, we worked on a exhibition, which ended also beginning of this year and was shown in the German Architecture Center. The name was Spaces of Solidarity. And there we collaborated with a lot of Berlin initiatives to talk about solidarity, about spaces. Why are these initiatives active? Against what are they kind of fighting, and with whom, and what are kind of the conflicts around. And we had the idea to go, especially after COVID, to go in the public space, also as an academic project, to follow a different approach in terms of knowledge production, but also in terms of knowledge transfer, to bring this knowledge which we gain also to a broader audience. And yeah, the kiosk is very low barrier, very accessible. It pops up in a public space. And yeah, the feedback was super huge and big, and we collaborated with initiatives from fields of health, housing, for example, Deutsche Wohnen Enteignen, you maybe heard of, with initiatives which are fighting for better labor conditions.
I think it's important to explain like what the kiosk physically is for the people to be able to kind of at home picture what we're talking about, because it's an idea, but it's also an object.
Yes, exactly. It's a metal structure, not so big. It's mobile. It's quite compact, but we can raise the top and put on posters for every location. And it's a design project as well. So we sit together with the initiatives and talk about what is the content, but also how it looks like.
And then you hold events. You put up these, you open the kiosk on a public space.
Yeah, we are more the support structure, but we actually, as a research project, we wanted the most synergy possible, so that we support the initiatives, which often work in their kind of free time in the evenings, exhausted, burnout, and initiatives and activism is also kind of synonyms to support them and to do something collaboratively.
Right, because it's, often, there's events happening where part of the participation in the kiosk is to provide these beverages or things that it's a step towards making it a more successful event, or an event that allows people to gather. And I think someone who's like organized things in the past year, people overlook how difficult it is to navigate the Ordnungsamt and the rules around something like providing juice and coffee. And I think that's a very interesting part of what you do.
Why do I'm actually here then? Latest issue.
Well, I came across you. Now I'm realizing I've seen you further, but the Manfred Moslehne protest or actions, which were, we covered this, I think, a couple of weeks ago, but, trying to keep this old man from getting kicked out of his house. You look at the photos of that, or you look at the images of that, and you see the kiosk there, and you see how it's part of participating. That's, to me, I think it's interesting to also just see this intersection of academia, activism, or like cultural gatherings, and how all of those things have to work together. But part of this function is necessary or vital in that it's providing help to sustaining these.
And a space to encounter, a space to meet, a space to talk, and a space to gain visibility. It's sometimes we pop up only for half of the day, sometimes for 1 week, depends really on the context and on the needs of the initiative. And we have funded ourselves the last 2 years, at least partly by the Senate. It's called Projektfonds Urbane Praxis, and they're kind of pushing, maybe it's also needs to be part of the process, not only opera, but also all this small stuff, initiatives. And it's not only about the big institutions, but in terms of cuts of the culture, but also probably this kind of funding structures are in danger. And therefore tomorrow there's a demonstration in front of Brandenburger Tor. So at 10 o'clock, please go there and fight for.
So are you worried about your potential funding next year as part of these cuts?
We're lucky and got other funding also already for next year, and we're still developing. Now we got invitation also to Vienna to present our project on an academic level. I was invited to a bunch of different universities all over Germany, but also in Milano. And this very small tool gained a lot of attention. We got design prizes, 2023. We also got invited to a design exhibition in China on social design.
I think it's very interesting that you're winning, this Design Vision Award, the Saxon State Prize for Design, these international invitations for something which isn't. I hope it's not offensive to say this, not like a breaking piece of technology. Is what you have, is your vision sort of reproducible? Is this like a tool that more groups can use?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's also not the first kiosk. It's not the last kiosk. I mean, there are also in Berlin already super nice existing kiosks. For example, at Hermannplatz, and against the investor which got now or went bankrupt. I think Berlin has a really vivid culture of urbane Praxis, which means the cultural activation of public space through different means, and this can be more performative, more coming from maybe social work, partly more from urban design, architecture, more from really art. Yeah, there are different angles, and I think the Kiosk of Solidarity is one example of that.
Well, given that we were talking earlier about the potential closure of a massive mall, and it wouldn't be the first one in Berlin, what do you see as a solution for these massive public spaces that could become empty? Because they are still privately owned. So if we put a library in them, that library money is just going to the private owner, who will obviously ask for the highest price. So it's not really feasible that we can just transform them into public spaces so easily without, some massive expropriation like Dan's calling for. So, I mean, what is the future of those spaces in reality?
Yeah, it's a good question. Now with the kiosk, we had in these 2 years, almost 30 stops in different neighborhoods. And one was in front of Treptower Park Center, for example. And there's one initiative fighting for or claiming that the Treptower Park Center, which is half empty and also not very attractive, perfect example of a 90s shopping mall, not very thought through. And now it's empty. One local initiative where also some of my students or former students are also involved, are fighting for a care center to transform this for all kind of care work, not only medical, but also kind of community can come together and care for each other.
Part of what you mentioned in terms of that, including the space you just talked about, is the idea of this attractiveness or design. And so there's the functionality of a kiosk, but the design element, making it look cool, making it attractive, is that also really important to making it successful, or is that part of the solidarity?
I think so. I think part of the left has the problem that a lot of messages don't come across to certain groups. And we have a quite colorful approach, and the poster design and the template which we're working with. And at least from the feedback from some initiatives are that it crosses more barriers to different communities and milieus. We always try to be as inclusive as possible, using a lot of languages which make sense in this context or in this neighborhood, so that we are a bit more inclusive in terms of design and languages and accessibility. But the overall graphic approach is also supporting this. And I think also the architecture design, which also looks kind of nice and
fun.
And fun. And in one point, in one location, one of the initiative or the activists said that a kid was pulling her mother to the kiosk, thinking of, okay, maybe candies.
Right.
But there was juice or something, but the kiosk was there the second time. We get the feedback that it's really worth it to go. The first time it was more, what are you doing here?
Right.
The second time was, how can we support, and this kind of neighborhood solidarity needs also time, and I think this house and the activists inside, they do amazing work, and we are only supporting them partly. And so it's not everything about the kiosk, but the kiosk also creates a broader network through different or linking different initiatives.
By moving around, does that help to create this cross-pollination or connecting people who would otherwise be doing similar work in different places or along parallel tracks?
I think so too. And I post and we post also on social media, on Instagram. If you look up Kiosk of Solidarity, we have quite, for such a small project, quite a good base there. And it's also linking journalists, academia, but also the design art scene with activism and politicians or general audiences. And I think this kind of connecting different bubbles is what the left, very general, is kind of lacking in the moment, where it's more like the fragmentization of different sub-bubbles and no one talks with each other anymore, at least.
Right.
You could assume that. And yeah, I think it needs more of this kind of projects which try to link different groups and movements and to unite to fight against all the problems we were talking the first hour and kind of the sellout of the city and the gentrification and kind of selling it to companies instead of making it accessible for people and for the neighborhood and to.
Where can we see the kiosk popping up next?
I mean, if you are in Berlin, you experienced maybe the last 2 days a very gray weather and quite cold and chilly and kind of light rain, and it's not kiosk season anymore. Unfortunately, it's time for us to recover a bit because it was quite exhausting, kind of connecting so many people and kind of putting so much effort in it. But now we are based at Dragon Areal behind, I don't know, it depends who's the audience. Curry 36 at Mehringdamm. There is this kind of former, very diverse piece of land, which an initiative also they fought against privatization, and now
it's a really interesting
city owned, and there is also where the kiosk was built and the first action happened, and there we have like a winter kiosk there at the Stadtwerkstatt in Kreuzberg-Friedrichshain, and
it's right behind the Finanzamt there, sort of, if you're trying to figure out where that intersection is. It's sort of hidden. If you haven't been back there in like 2 years or 3 years, it was just sort of a bunch of abandoned lots and car shops, and it's something really cool growing back there. I'm really excited.
Behind the Finanzamt, if you're based in Kreuzberg, then you know the place.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Moritz, for coming to tell us about the Kiosk of Solidarity, and good luck with your next year's programs as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's bringing us to an end of a very interesting and long chat. That we started this, and I wasn't sure what we were going to talk about, and by the end we've talked about everything.
Yeah, we've cut 17 different headlines.
Yeah,
I mean, guys, there's other stuff. Just Google Berlin news if you're, if you think we missed anything.
Guys, it was great hanging out and chatting again.
Really nice to see you.
See you again next year.
Yeah, stay tuned. For those of you that support the show through regular donations or one time, it's deeply appreciated. It does necessary to keep it going. So thank you to everyone who has been doing that and everyone who shows up to the live show and makes donations as well. That is very, very wonderful. I'd also like to mention I've got some shows coming up. If you want to come see me do stand-up comedy, it's kind of like this, only Joel doesn't keep saying serious things. You'll just have to go to my website. I'll put some links in the show notes there about some of that.
We should also thank our good hosts, Podigee, who allowed us to use their cool little office here in cool little Friedrichshain.
Yes.
Podigee is a platform for podcasters.
Yeah, it's a hosting platform, and they're real nice. So if you need a podcast, go buy one. No, that's not how it works. We got podcasts for sale over here at Podigee. You want? I got 10 podcasts for. No, okay, don't do that voice. All right, for listeners at home, Izzy looks upset.
We got through the whole thing without. So
without me doing character work.
Yeah.
That's what the listeners come here for.
Oh no, I thought you were doing a specific character. I thought you were doing that.
Oh, you thought that was my Trump?
Yeah.
Oh God, no.
You're like,
No, that was just. I love all Americans just sound the same to you once we start yelling or making a point. That's, oh my God, the bigotry there. So yes, come out for shows, come out for another recording, and thank you for everyone who listens at home on the internet, and for everyone who comes out to live show. Give yourselves a round of applause. We'll see everyone next time.